It's been my pleasure bringing you film reviews, interviews, panels, and in-depth breakdowns for what marks 40 episodes today. It's hard to believe we're at the season finale of the 4th season of Picture Lock, but the show is just getting started and growing legs. Today I'll talk with 3 creators about their incredibly entertaining shows. I'll talk with co-creator of Epic Film Guys, Justin Esquivel, creator of Fantastic Forum, Ulysses Campbell, and no stranger to the show, Devin Gallagher, about his new podcast, Media on the Radio. That's all ahead on Picture Lock. In the spring of 2014, after months of planning and discussion, 2 guys extremely passionate about films, Nick Haskins and Justin Esquivel, came together to create the Epic Film Guys. The weekly podcast covers movies as only they can. It's in my podcast subscription and iTunes and should be in yours. Justin, thank you for coming on the show and welcome.
Thanks for having me on. It's a pleasure.
No, sir. The pleasure is all mine. Like I said, I really do enjoy the podcast, and I love geeking out with fellow film nerds. I love to start at the beginning. When did you first fall in love with film?
Honestly, and we talked about this in the podcast many, many times. I was 5 years old. It was opening night in June 1989 with Tim Burton's first Batman movie. I remember begging my parents to see that movie for weeks, seeing the ads in the newspaper. Such a huge deal for a kid that age, and seeing that movie just opened me up to not only comic book related things, but just big budget motion pictures, basically. Yeah. So that really opened the door for me onto other things.
Yeah, and it's interesting because you and I, we kind of go back and forth a little bit on social media, and I just got into the figurine collection game. I said, look, I'm gonna just throw off all this, be a grown-up thing, and just grab some new Superman and the Batman figurines. You're a collector as well?
I certainly am, yeah. I think that my wife will kill me if I buy any more, to be honest with you. But it's just an addiction, I swear to God. It's just like, all the crap all over my arms here. It's just, I love movies, and I love collecting things that pertain to the movies.
Yeah.
So I'm all about wearing it on my sleeve, technically.
Now, I know the director, Charles, he wanted to get some of these tats in there. Just show off some of these tats. I see Superman right here. What else do you got on there?
Yeah, Batman and T-Rex from Jurassic Park, King Kong, Michael Myers. My legs, they're kind of hidden, but I've got Keaton's Batman, Nicholson's Joker.
Really?
Charles Bronson.
Nice.
Among others, so yeah, they're all pretty much movie related.
That's pretty awesome. All right, so just let us know, how did the Epic Film Guys come together?
Well, I actually started working with my co-creator Nick Haskins at a job, and we actually started talking about our avid love of Tim Burton's Batman, and it began. We just started talking about other movies and reciting movie quotes and stuff, and then years down the line, we would do it in between things at work. And if I recall, it was somebody else, one of our coworkers, were like, you guys should do this, like record it or do it on video or something, because it's pretty entertaining, especially like our banter, and we would argue about things. So we're like, hey, why don't we just try this? And that's how it became just Epic Film Guys.
Okay, cool. Now, one of the things I love about you guys is you start out the show and you're like, what are you drinking? I mean, it's right there in the logo.
It is, yeah.
All right, the Oscars are tonight. What are you drinking?
I haven't decided that yet. Honestly, I'm a little bit late to the game on that. I probably will pick something up on my way back home, but not sure. I like that idea. I'm kind of like spontaneous in that respect, where every week I kind of just say, hey, I've never tried that. I'm going to grab that for tonight.
Right. All right, so do you guys drink through the entire podcast, or is it just like in the beginning you just kind of sip it?
It really depends. Sometimes neither of us will know if the other one's still going or not, or in between breaks oh, no, I only had the one, or no, I've got like 3. It's just, we never really plan it that way. It's just, and it depends on what we're talking about too. I think for Deadpool, I think we had maybe 3 or 4 each.
Okay.
It was kind of required for that.
Right. It's a fun time. All right, so the latest podcast, you guys were actually breaking down kind of the Oscars.
We were, yeah.
Who you thought would win. One of the things that I love that you guys do is you guys kind of, cross, pollinate with other podcasters.
Yeah.
So maybe you could just talk a little bit about, because I think with you guys' podcasts, it's so awesome how you really shine a light on other podcasts. And I think it's something unique.
Yeah.
And I'll kind of actually geek out about this in a second. But, what this made you guys decide to be a part of the hashtag Pattern Family and all that good stuff?
Actually, my partner, Nick, really started to get into it a while ago. When we decided we were going to do a podcast, it was because we used to do video reviews, and our dynamic was off. I would try to do them alone, and it didn't have that same energy to it because he wasn't there next to me. So when we decided to do the podcast, he started talking to some people online and networking on Twitter, and Pattern Family just welcomed us right in, and now he's like one of the main players there. And it's all about networking and really focusing on promoting everyone else's show, especially when everyone really likes doing the same thing.
Right.
It's a hobby, but we have passion for these things, especially, hey, we're the Epic Film Guys. We love film, so it's great when we can just talk to other people about it, bring other people on. And a lot of times, me and Nick can agree on a lot of things, so we want to bring in a different dynamic and not somebody else, like an outside party, to kind of, bring in some new energy.
Right. Now, is Nick in New York?
Nick is in New York.
Okay.
He is from my hometown. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to mention it on the air. Binghamton, New York. That's where I'm from. He's there in the middle of nowhere right now. But,
nice. How do you guys record the podcast? Because you do it every Tuesday, right?
We do it on Skype, actually.
Okay.
We do it through Skype, yeah.
Nice. That's crystal clear for Skype.
It took a lot of work to get it that way. Believe me, if you listen to our older episodes, they don't sound nearly as clear.
Gotcha. All right, so you kind of talked about it already, but how did you kind of get into the film criticism aspect of it? And would you call yourselves film critics or just film enthusiasts?
I think actually Nick started before I did, because he's a writer, and he started writing reviews. As soon as I knew him, he'd write stories, but every time he'd see a movie, he'd write a really long, in-depth review, and they were always really well written. And I'm like, well, when we first started talking about movies and doing something together, we were just like, well, we're just going to say our thoughts about it. And I always think about when I was a kid, and I would watch Siskel and Ebert, and it was really important to me. Even though as a kid I barely ever agreed with them, it was just kind of like that fun thing to sit and watch people talk about movies and how they felt about it. They were criticizing the films, they were critics, but they also just told you if you should see it or not. And I feel like we just kind of take that natural approach about it. We love it or we hate it, and we're just going to tell you why. But if I'm a critic, I guess it's up to our followers or our viewers or our listeners to really decide that.
Yeah, most definitely. What do you guys like most about doing the podcast?
I think it's just that we love movies, and it's really fun for us to go back and forth, especially knowing that I have to wait after I see something to talk with him about it the next week on the podcast. So for example, if we just saw Hail Caesar, we don't talk about it from when I saw it opening night until the next Tuesday. So it just builds up and just explodes into movie fandom. I think it's just a fun time, and I love bringing other people on and just talking about movies.
Yeah, it's awesome. I think these days I feel separates indie podcasts, right, is consistency, production value, and web presence. And that's something that you guys all have. I'm just looking at the graphics, who does the graphics? You got the shirt, you got this thing packaged, man.
That's
it's
me,
nice.
man. Yeah, it's all about, and I used to do music for about 15 years of my life. I used to play in some rock and roll bands, maybe heavy metal, you could call it. But so it's kind of ingrained in me. But when I started deciding that I wanted to do something movie related, I've always loved movies. Just figured I'd put all my passion into that.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Let me read this really quickly. Brilliant, insightful, hilarious. Plus, they really make an effort to reach out to their listeners on social media. After a few episodes, you feel so comfortable with them, you forget you don't actually know them in real life, but they're always available to talk movies with you on Twitter and Facebook. Now, this is an actual review on iTunes. Which I think is a testament to, that what you just talked about, the passion that comes out in the podcast as you guys talk about it. What do you think about that? And also, how do you guys keep in contact with your listeners like that? They really support the show.
Yeah, honestly, it's we get personal messages all the time on Facebook, on my Instagram, on Twitter. He handles most of that, but he gets all kinds of messages and requests and comments, and we love them. They're the reason why we do it, aside from just us being two guys that want to, sit every Tuesday night next to a microphone with a beer and, hey, did you like this movie? No, I didn't really like it. It's just they give us that fuel to add to the fire to really we have someone that cares. We want you to participate with us. We want to hear what you think too. And we always give the opportunity for our fans to come on the show as well.
Yeah.
So, it's just a fun time. It's just a big group of people that love movies. I'd love to have you on the show sometime too, if you'd like.
Yeah, one day that'd
be a great
awesome.
time.
Yeah, exactly. That's cool, man. I like I said, I really enjoyed the podcast. One of the questions that I wanted to ask you, just in regards to coming up with your show, what the topic's going to be, kind of the outline of it. Do you guys actually plan out, all right, this segment is this, that, or is it just more of a free flow?
That guy right there. He does all the planning. He tells me what we're doing before we do it, and then I plan for that. Well, for example, we're working on this week leading up to Batman, Superman, Dawn of Justice. We're actually going to do a Christopher Reeve retrospective on all of the Chris Reeve Superman films.
Nice.
So we kind of just plan ahead, based on what we know is coming out, what we know we're going to be seeing, and whatever guests we're going to have and what they may be wanting to talk about as well.
So do you guys lean more towards like the superhero films? I think there's a certain segment of, whether it's podcasters or film review shows that kind of love to geek out, about the superhero films. Do you think, because on Instagram, man, you already bought your tickets.
I lucked out.
Yeah.
I lucked out with that. That was actually a surprise. I didn't think that was going to happen because they don't go on sale till tomorrow.
Right.
We love superhero movies. Definitely. But to the same respect, we don't like to pigeonhole ourselves right into that because we love everything. We'll watch anything from an indie flick that no one's talking about to, for me, I love old school film, and Nick does as well. Classic cinema as well. So, we like everything, but I think it's those movies that really get us energized. Last year we had Jurassic World, we had Star Wars, we had Avengers 2. These are big budget movies, and you look forward to it like you're a kid. Like that nostalgia is there, but in this day and age you grow up and it's constant. Like back in the day you had to wait for a superhero movie or something every couple of years, but now they're constant. So we just get to enjoy that now, and I'm glad my daughter is growing up in a world where she gets to enjoy that.
Right, exactly. I was thinking about that. I got 2 kids, so it's gonna be interesting when they get old enough. Can you think about like if they started watching the Marvel Cinematic Universe from start to finish? Like, when would you finish? It would probably take you like a couple weeks or maybe like a full week at this point. Yeah. Just to get through all those movies. It's crazy.
It's nuts. It's awesome, and it's a great time to live in for movies. That's all I have to say. A lot of people complain about that, but I love every decade. There's a lot of movies I love, but I think that we're just really lucky, as movie lovers to have all these great movies coming out. Well, you could call them great. Not all of them are, but it's just seeing these properties get treated this much respect and really getting a lot of creative people behind them that are amazing. It's awesome.
Yeah, most definitely. All right, so with the Epic Film guys, like what is the goal? Because like you said, it's a hobby right now, but is it? Would you like to see get picked up, sponsorship?
I'd love it. Actually, we would just want to do it and keep doing it until we can get as big as we possibly can. It's really just a passion for us. I don't care about it's not about making money or anything like that. We just really want to be Epic Film guys, and as big as that can be, as fast as this ride can take us. That's what it's all about. There we are, ladies and gentlemen. Follow us, listen to us.
Yeah, I think that's what it's all about, man. It's the passion, and honestly, I think in this day and age, there's so many podcasts that are springing up right now, right? And so I thought about it. Like, I started listening to podcasts at least in 2008, probably earlier, right? But now it's like something where big companies try to market or get behind it. And I think you're absolutely right. Like, you got to keep the passion. And honestly, it has to be something that you wouldn't mind waking up and doing for free, which you're pretty much doing right now.
I love it. I wish that could be my day job 24/7. I still do it. That is what I do, but it's not my actual day job,
right?
Unfortunately.
All right. So how can people reach out to you guys? Where can they find the podcast?
Everything is on epicfilmguys.com. That's where you can find all of our Instagram, our Twitter, our Podbean, our Stitcher, everything. Everything's on there.
Awesome. Where can I get a cool shirt like that?
We're actually going to be making some more of these soon.
Nice.
Brand new, fresh design. I'll throw you one when we get it made.
I didn't pitch it to you so that you would like be like, I'll give it to you. I just wanted to know where I can get an Epic Film Guys
These
t-shirt.
were very limited release, so
Okay.
these are like a collector's item. They may be on eBay right now. I'm not sure, for like 10 cents. I don't know.
Right, nice. All right, Justin. So let me just ask you one more question. You guys have been doing this since 2014. About how many episodes have you actually done?
I think we're upwards 34 is what we just finished. I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
I
Because
think
it
we're
looks like
34.
your episodes always start over again. Like it gets to a certain number and then.
Well, we just rebranded.
Okay,
we were the Epic Film Guys doing the Real Rundown podcast, but no, we decided to drop the Real Rundown. That was an old segment that we used to do when we did video reviews. So we decided to just call it the Epic Film Guys podcast.
Gotcha. Awesome. All right, Justin Esquivel, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me on. It was
Yeah.
a fantastic time.
All right, we'll take a short break and we'll be back with Ulysses Campbell, creator of Fantastic Forum.
I'm Victor Nolasco,
And I'm Stephen Rubin.
and we're the directors of The Jackie Movie. And you are watching Picture Lock.
In 2007, my next guest started a television show dedicated to comics, science fiction, fantasy, and related media. The show now reaches over 4 million homes in the Northeast region. I'm hoping he's going to teach me how he did that. Ulysses Campbell, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Kevin.
All right, I always like to start at the beginning. When did you first fall in love with the whole sci-fi comic genre?
Oh, since I was a very young boy. I used to love watching the old sci-fi movies on television and comic books. That's always sort of been a natural for me also. There was a sweet shop down the street from where my mom and I lived, and we were passing by one day, and I went in there, and there was this giant-sized Batman comic book that was on the rack, and I made her buy it for her. I was in first grade.
Wow.
And that was kind of the start of that. But it always seemed kind of natural for me.
Yeah, what was the episode number or the comic book number? Do you remember?
Oh, you're going to ask me about that? I've actually looked it up.
Okay.
And I remember the cover. Off the top of my head, it might have been 124, but don't start me to lie. Just I don't remember it with that clarity. But,
right. All right. So, you've been a comic book lover of the sci-fi genre, and then one day you just wake up and say, you know what, I want to start a TV show. Is that how it happened? What was the genesis for the show?
Well, it's interesting that you ask that because I had a interest in community media for a number of years, and I lived in the District of Columbia, and of course there was a station there, and I had this flirtation with getting involved, but I hadn't actually followed through. And since nobody approached me to put me on television, I said, well, I guess I'll have to do this myself. But the decision to do the show really sprang out of some of the conversations that we had in the comic book store where I shopped every Wednesday when the new releases came out. I was standing around talking to some friends, and we were debating some different area of comics history or philosophy or current events or something like that. And it was a fairly interesting conversation, and I thought to myself, this would make a really interesting television show, discussion about this. And it didn't really come to fruition until one day because I was still working an office job at the time, and I left work early, happened to stop off at my local comic book store, which was in Georgetown at the time, and there were only 3 people in the store. It was just me, the manager, and this beautiful woman. And I looked around because ordinarily, if you see a beautiful woman in a comic book store, it's because she's there with her husband or her boyfriend.
Right.
But it was just me and the manager and her. And so I went to the manager. I was like, yo, man, where's her husband and boyfriend or whatever? And he was like, dude, she doesn't have a husband or a boyfriend. She is here because she likes comic books. And I couldn't believe it. And as I came to know this young woman, I realized she was the X factor because, you know, without her, it's just a bunch of fanboys looking stupid at each other. And, she was sort of that one critical piece that I felt was going to make the fanboys tune in. And I think it turned out just like that.
Wow. All right, so you've been doing this since 2007. I'm sure that you've seen a lot and done a lot, and obviously to continue making the show happen, you had to learn some things along the way. What are some of those things that you've learned in doing Fantastic Forum?
It's probably not smart to do a show like this. No, in all seriousness, I had to initially take some classes at DCTV because I knew very well. I shouldn't say what I knew about television and video production was somewhat dated. So, and I didn't have my own equipment. That was, again, one of the benefits of community media that provided me access to the wonderful training and equipment and facilities that was going to make it possible to actually put this show on. So, but I had to take some classes, and then I had to actually go out and, because the show has several components. It's a segmented show. The primary component is a discussion among and between geeks. But we also do interviews with comics or media personalities. There is special events that we will go and cover. We'll do special features, parodies, and a toy and game profile. So, but you have to go and actually gather some of this other stuff. I mean, you're sitting in the studio because it was initially a studio produced show before we started going out on location and taping in our favorite comic book store. But you had to go to conventions to be able to get to the talent and conduct some of the interviews with the talent. You had to actually either go to some place like Toy Fair, where there were going to be a lot of the toys that were available that you could arrange to shoot, or people had to bring things from their own collection into the studio so that they could be filmed. We had to find these various events that were of interest to be able to go out to. And there was always something new that you'd come across, and you have to make sure that you've got permission or otherwise cajole or arm twist or do whatever you need to do to be able to interest whomever in coming on or sharing their geek with us. And so that is, in essence, what we did, what we try to do.
Awesome. You're watching or listening to Picture Lock. I'm talking with the creator of Fantastic Forum. All right, Ulysses, so what is, or is there any significance in the title Fantastic Forum? How'd you come up with that?
Well, okay. I was thinking that, because there were a bunch of titles that I kicked around, and because it's a panel discussion, and we're talking about different topics of geek interest, I said, well, that sounds like a forum of sorts. And so, like I said, I played around with a couple of different names. The Washington, D.C. Comic Book Forum, Ulysses Campbell's Sci-Fi Forum, and a bunch of other stuff. And you are probably aware, because I know that you have some more than a passing interest in the genre, of a superhero team created by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby in the Marvel Universe called the Fantastic Four. Well, it hit me like a ton of bricks. What kind of forum is it? It's a fantastic forum. And right then I knew I had the name, because you had that connection to comics through that. And the way it rolled off your tongue, I felt like it was a nice little play on words that people would be able to remember. Now, as it turns out, it has not always been to our advantage to have that name. It's awfully close to Fantastic Four, and particularly when I have comic book artists or writers or media people doing drops for the show, invariably you hand them the mic and you say, okay, say your name and you're watching Fantastic Forum. And they say their name and you're watching Fantastic Four. It's like, no, try again, just like it says on the mic flag.
Right.
Fantastic Forum. Oh, yes, of course. I'm sorry. It's so close to Fantastic Four, I just said that.
All right, so, over the years, you've probably seen an evolution in regard to sci-fi shows as well as comic shows, right? So could you speak a little to that? Where do you think the genre is now? Because, for me personally, I love watching my Flash. I hate Arrow, but I love watching Flash. And, you're one of the guys that when you come into AIM, I can talk to you about it, but I can actually fact check with you and say, did this actually happen in the comic books? I just like watching it at this point. I don't necessarily have the comic book history knowledge. I have friends that do that. But what would you say about the evolution of shows like this?
Well, there are a number of excellent points that you raised, Kevin. And I think first and foremost is the fact that these various genres are now becoming mainstream. I mean, and you got to appreciate this because this was something that was fringe for so long. I mean, you know, when I was in second grade, I had to get a book bag because I was getting chased home from school, and you couldn't, you couldn't be carrying, something. You had to have something that you could strap on and so you could really run and get away. And for so long, this was seen as, oh, you were a nerd, you were a geek, you were a loser, you were living in your parents' basement, couldn't get a job, couldn't get a girl, all this kind of thing, if you had an interest in some of these things. Right. And the biggest change now is that you look at television, because this, show on CBS, with all the geeks, that's like the hottest show on television. You've got these movies that are coming out that are grossing over $1 billion worldwide. You've got all the preponderance of television shows on every network, the dramatic shows, action shows, and they're all about these characters. I mean, in fact, if you've got some kind of comic book character, you can get a license on this stuff. Somebody's going to want to make a movie or a TV show or something.
Right.
So, the fact that there are so many of these shows out there, because I can tell from the gray in my beard, I've been around for a minute, and I remember the days when we got excited when a science fiction movie came out, because that was not a usual occurrence. And now it seems like, I don't want to say the majority, but there are certainly a high percentage of films that are being released both domestically and in the foreign markets that are right in this genre. They're either comic books, or they're science fiction, or they're fantasy, and these have been the biggest movies that you've had. So I think that's very significant.
Yeah, I think you're definitely absolutely right. What would you say right now in terms of things like, Deadpool just came out, right? Mm-hmm. And it's kind of like an anomaly. I think they got the tone right and all this kind of stuff. Do you think that we're going to see more films that are the rated R superhero films now that Deadpool, did so well in the box office?
Well, Deadpool wasn't the first R-rated film that has come out.
Yeah, definitely.
We've had a couple of little movies along the way, called Blade and The Crow, that have both had some very serious tone and content. And Blade in particular, and a lot of people aren't necessarily immediately aware of this, but Blade is the film that single-handedly saved Marvel, because you had what is essentially a C-list character at best, but you put him in this film, and all of a sudden, hey, here he was, and people went to see it, and it did very well, over $1 million at the box office. So, that's something else that's interesting, and it sort of harkens back to your earlier question, because the original source material of all this stuff has been popular for many years and still generates interest. But what's happening now is you've got these various movie properties that they may start with the original source material, but then you have a sequel that tends to draw more on the film, and then another sequel, and so maybe that draws more on the second film. And in essence, as you get further and further down the line, you get further and further away from the original source material. The other thing is the point of entry, because particularly given the fact that a character like Superman debuted in 1938, and Fantastic Four in 1961, but this is a lot of time between then and now, and so a lot of history, particularly given that most of these books were published on a monthly basis, and in some cases, like Superman, there were several books. He was in Action Comics, and Superman, and Lois Lane, and Jimmy Olsen, and the Justice League of America, and all these other things. So one of the things I understand that the film producers are starting to discover, since they have created this shared universe, is that, all right, so you go to see Captain America the First Avenger, well, that's great, but then they have Captain America the Winter Soldier, they're getting ready to come out with Captain America Civil War.
Right.
Now, if you are more of a casual viewer who's just going to see Captain America Civil War, you're at something of a disadvantage if you aren't exactly familiar with Captain America the First Avenger or Winter Soldier. And so now, the films are starting to have the same challenge, I don't want to call it a problem, but challenge that the comic books have had in terms of creating a point of entry.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I obviously we could probably talk about this much more.
certainly.
Yeah. It's
You're gonna have
fun.
to have me back on.
Exactly. Hey, and then I gotta go be sit in this Fantastic Forum panel one day.
Yes.
It's
one
so
day
cool.
soon.
All right. How can people check out the show, watch the show if they want to?
Oh, bless you. Well, it happens to be on Arlington Independent Media. And I'm going to encourage people to go to the AIM website, but also if you go to the website for the Fantastic Forum series, which is fantasticforum.tv, every month we update the program schedule for all the various stations that carry the show, hopefully one in your area. And you can find out when it's on. You can also watch it through the website. You can also go to YouTube or Vimeo and watch episodes of the show.
Awesome, man. 4 million homes.
More than 4 million homes.
That's amazing. That's awesome.
Yeah, I wish it was making me some money.
I hear you on that one. Ulysses Campbell, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thank you, Kevin.
All right. We'll take a short break and be back with Devin Gallagher. Don't go anywhere.
Hello, my name is Deepan Sensavadia. I'm the writer, director, and producer of Kara, and you are watching Picture Locked.
My next guest has been on the show a couple of times, both for different documentaries he co-directed. This time, my bestie, Devin Gallagher, returns to talk to me about his new podcast, Media on the Radio. A podcast about the business of media through the eyes of professionals and teaches how to break into the media field. You may even hear yours truly on an episode. Devin, welcome back to the show, buddy.
Thanks for having me on, man.
It's my pleasure. All right, man. So I kind of know this, but the audience doesn't. What inspired you to create Media on the Radio?
So I think what really inspired me to create Media on the Radio was having worked at Arlington Independent Media for 8 years, and just seeing kind of the people come through the door from varied parts of the media field. A lot of people actually say, for example, somebody working at Discovery, but they're working behind a desk, they're clearing images, they're working on a computer all day.
Yeah.
And they want to break in and try and work in the production side. So we have people and we have trainings for that. But what I was finding was it was really interesting to start to talk to some of these media professionals and see kind of the different trends within the media field.
And what would you say is your target audience that you're going for with the podcast?
I think anybody who's studying communications, journalism, radio, television production in college, as well as anyone, as I mentioned, that's trying to transition out of a job. So it talks a lot about professional development in terms of the media field. And the media field is changing every 5 years. So kind of getting a case study of all these different people and working in all these different media jobs. Well, what are people looking for? What are the skills that you need to be learning now so that you're ready in 5 years?
Yeah, and I definitely think you tackle that, which is kind of cool because some of the people that you talk with, you kind of ask them about their kind of break-in, how they got in, and I think it's definitely great for like college students who probably are listening to the podcast, on their way to school or whatever the case may be, and they can really get some in-depth insight. How many episodes have you actually recorded, and do you have like right now?
So I've recorded somewhere close to 30, and I've got 16 on iTunes right now. The trends that I'm seeing throughout are the move of kind of away from traditional media jobs, meaning people that are working in a newsroom, to media jobs that are in bigger companies. So for the first time, we have a lot of big nonprofits that are hiring media professionals for the first time, or building a studio in their office space and having need for someone to run that studio as opposed to a newsroom that they're going to run.
Right.
And then also on top of that, the big trend is that people need employees that can do 3 or 4 things as opposed to just a photographer. You need to be able to do some graphic design, maybe some web development. And really, the budgets are being cut too. So you need to be able to do more with less, maybe some skills with some iPhone skills with media production. is what some people are looking for, because that's the kind of budget you might be working with.
Right. And it's funny that you mentioned that, because even some of my film critic buddies, they go on the red carpet, and what do they use? They use their iPhone, straight up. They use their iPhone and they hook up like a Rode mic or something like that to get the audio. But literally, at the same time, if you think about it, right, the iPhone is so small, you don't have to take the big camera and the lights and all that stuff, and they literally just hold it like this, you get them framed up well, and you just have the interview. So it's interesting that you kind of found that.
Well, it's also, they just released a selfie stick for a MacBook Pro as well.
Stop it, man. No.
Yeah, they did. It's on Twitter.
A selfie stick for a MacBook Pro?
Yeah.
That's heavy.
Well, the new ones are lighter. Yeah.
Okay, that's weird. I got to look that up afterwards. Okay. All right. So what are some of your goals for short-term and long-term for Media on the Radio?
So for now, it's been just, honestly, it's an extracurricular activity. So the first one that I did it with Laura McCardle about the new radio station here at Arlington Independent Media, which is WERA. And I ended up spending like 15 hours editing it. And I'm like, I can't do that. For every week, I have way too much going on. So I've kind of found a way to economize it and streamline it. But the goal long term is to just to kind of keep having these conversations. So, because I'm learning a lot, and I'm hoping other people are. But the goal also is to branch out to maybe some other people that I don't know. So I've really kind of centered around friends or friends of friends, because I do want to maintain some sort of kind of jovial, like you're hanging out with a friend, getting a coffee, and you're talking about the biz, right? Yeah. So what I'm afraid of is if I reach out to other people that aren't necessarily connected to me in some way, yeah, they might have a lot of knowledge, but they might really not have anything to say about it. They might not really be that self-reflective about the industry or about themselves. So as I move forward, I'm looking for really unique stories about how people broke in, because I think that's what really people crave, is the information is good and tips and tricks for breaking into the industry, but the stories themselves of how people break in is actually what people seem to be liking. So that's the feedback I've been getting.
Yeah, that's cool. And so I kind of, it's no secret we're friends. I've kind of been able to see the behind the scenes as you've slowly developed the podcast. So could you talk a little bit about how you've actually started to develop it? Because I know when you first started out, you're like, this is the idea, this is what I want to do. And like you said, like spending 15 hours editing it. So now I know you kind of have things down to, not a science, I'm sure,
right.
But you've got things down to like how you want to lay out the podcast. Can you talk a little bit about
Well, I've become, and I always say this, I'm a way better editor than I am a host. So I edit it for content, but also to keep it as tight as possible, because I understand people are busy, and we're not bringing on celebrities to talk about how they broke into the media field, besides Kevin Sampson, of course. But the idea is to keep the nuggets really there and keep it compelling and short and something that people can digest, on the way to work.
Yeah.
But with that, it's I record for about a half hour to an hour, and then I cut it down to about 25 minutes. So you're just kind of getting hopefully the good stuff.
Yeah.
And I've been working also with some people, and I've been actually reaching out to other editors or people that want to learn how to edit audio, so that they can do a lot of the upfront edits, getting rid of all the ums and the coughs and everything else. Nice. And I can come through and make the creative edits for content. I'm actually finding that I've found some people to make some of the creative edits as well. So nice. I'm building the empire.
Oh man, I gotta steal some of those moves. I gotta get somebody to edit the podcast on mine. I'm not gonna steal it from you. That's awesome though. That's great. Yeah. That's great. All right, so you and I, we talk about podcasts all the time, right? We talk about the Art of Manliness podcast you put me onto, and I talk about Denzel Washington is the greatest actor of all time. Period. Podcast. What is it about podcasts that you think people really enjoy, and why? They're so effective these days?
I think it's I do some freelance work, which is something I talk about a lot on the podcast, and I'm actually bringing on people that work in the field commercially to do commercials, videos, working with clients to build media products. And one of the products that I really want to push people towards, and my clients and other people, is podcasts, because it's really cheap to produce, and it's the only as far as I'm concerned, the only way that you could reach young people for more than 5 minutes on YouTube. It's the only vehicle. They're going to pick it up. They're going to walk to work. They're going to drive to work, take the train. You got them for that 45 minutes. Or they're on the elliptical machine in
Right.
45 minutes. So it's really the only long form of media that really exists that is effective right now, as far as my opinion.
These millennials.
Yeah.
I'm a millennial, so I get to say that I'm a millennial. So yeah, you too.
Yeah.
All right, Dev. So I guess one of the big questions would be, how can people actually listen to the podcast?
Well, I have a blog page that's waitwhatpro.com that people can actually just go on, and there's some pictures and some posts. But also on iTunes, you can, if you have a podcast app, you can download it and you can find it. The numbers have grown from zero.
Right.
Doubling from zero is not the best, but no. It's kind of doubled every month, actually,
Nice.
the numbers, which is I don't know where it's going to plateau, but it seems to be, I've been getting a lot of good feedback, and people seem to be interested in the material.
Yeah.
And what I like about it is the content is helpful. So we're bringing in some people that have worked in the industry for 30 years, and what's their take on the media field. And my bias is, I'm a documentary filmmaker and media trainer, and so I like to talk to documentary filmmakers,
Right.
but also in this area, people in this area, because I think this area is really unique in terms of the media outlets. So I also talk to people in LA and New York and other places, but it kind of centers around this area, and I'm hoping to branch out into other forms of media, like, for example, people that develop apps and people that have startups, because I
Nice.
think that's a big market that people would like to know more about.
Yeah, most definitely. All right, if you were gonna point people to Media on the Radio, and you're like, hey, this is one episode you should listen to, you should check this one out, what would it
Of
be?
course, Kevin Sampson.
I was hoping you would say that. No, well, okay.
Well, it's great. Well, it's
Wait.
great.
Better layup question is, what's been one of the things that you've learned so far in your talks? Because you're learning at the same time too.
I am,
right?
a lot.
What
Things
what
I
are-
should have known.
Exactly. Which episode or which person have you talked to, and you're like, wow, that was really cool, or I didn't know that.
I think one, Christina Sequeira from AJ Plus was really interesting, because I didn't realize how in a short amount of time how much they have grown. In about a year, AJ Plus has grown to have 1 billion hits on all their media outlets or their media channels.
Wow.
And they just have kind of cracked the code in terms of social media video and really reaching audiences with unique but also kind of impactful news, digital journalism that people are copying right now.
Yeah.
And she kind of got into that. She said, I can't really talk about what we're doing next, but she got into some of the things that they were doing over there, and it was really fascinating.
Yeah, it's interesting because now AJ Plus is one of those first people on Facebook that I actually wound up liking, because people would always share their video, and I was like, it was so consistent in terms of like great information. It was quick, whatever. And then after a while, I was like, you know what? I actually want to know when the next video is out. So I like actually liked it. And so a lot of times now I'm finding that people are like, we want to make a video like AJ Plus, which is interesting. It's like, kind of like when you say, I guess I want Pampers, when, really it's a diaper, but you call it Pampers, the brand,
Yeah. Well, it's also getting addicted to content, and that's how people are then become successful. Is if you keep liking or if you keep watching the same videos, you're gonna crave those videos, and you're gonna need to see what the next video is when it gets released.
Right.
And that's the whole idea of building a market around the media that you're putting out.
Yeah. Well, I think if you start listening to Media on the Radio, you're going to start craving Media on the Radio.
That's right.
And you're going to want to keep listening to whatever's coming next from Devin Gallagher. So, Devin, thanks for coming on the show, man. Appreciate
Thank you.
it.
Appreciate it.
All right. Stay tuned. We'll be right back for the wrap-up. All right, Devin.
Hi, I'm Vishwas. I am the writer and star of The Visit, and you are watching Picture Lock.
That's all for this episode. I'd like to thank my guests, Justin Esquivel, Ulysses Campbell, and Devin Gallagher for coming on the show. Make sure you check out their podcast and show. You can find Picture Lock on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Periscope. Don't forget to check out the website, picturelockshow.com, for movie reviews and news, and if you're interested in being a guest on the show. Until next season, I hope you stay locked on film.